Hello, Internet! I'm here with Frank Romero of Denver.
Denver, Colorado.
That's right. The man, the myth, the Franco.
Yeah. Mythical is right.
Yes. Who is, I guess in my mind, most notably known for this little gem here, a little mix of poetry and art that allows you to de-slot and mix and match the poems to art how you wish, or poems to poems and art to art. Whatever you like. It's all size, so it's all interchangeable. Something you're not going to see from DC.
That's true.
So, what brought you to this project? How did this come to fruition?
Sheer boredom. No. I'd been thinking about doing something like this for a while, so self-publishing and doing a handmade book, which this book is completely handmade. And so it kind of came about talking, first I should say this book has two poets and two artists. So it's a flip book, one side is my art, and Eric Hinckley, or my poem, and Eric Hinckley does the art on one side. And then on the other side, you can, so here's one side, and then you can flip it over like that. And on this side, the poet is a person named Tamika Coleman, and the art is done by Bob Parks. So we had been looking for something to do together, Tamika and I, and we hit upon this, and I thought it might be kind of cool to have the cards kind of be interchangeable, so that if you didn't particularly like the art that went with one poem, you could change it around and such. So they're all put in with these little photo corners, and so you can slide them out and rearrange them. You can have one side be nothing but art, one side be nothing but poetry, mix and match them however you want. So it really just kind of came about just wanting to do a project with Tamika and coming up with this. Water songs / For the Dream. So my side is entitled Water Songs, hers is entitled For the Dream.
Right. And so did you write the poems and the artist did the images, or?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. These were poems that I'd been looking to put together for a while. And so what I did was I approached Eric Hinckley and Bob Parks about illustrating, and they were pretty amenable to the idea. So I gave them the poems and basically didn't give them any type of instruction at all. So it was more of a just kind of do what you do. And the results are pretty surprising in some of the poems. In fact, I mean, surprising in a very good way. I was pretty stunned by the results. Not anything that I would have ever thought of. And I think the illustrations were better in some cases.
And so you kind of had a preconceived notion of what the art would like, but what you got back was different, but you kind of liked it a bit more? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you always, when you're working with an artist and you've written something and they're illustrating it, you always have an idea of what it's going to come back like. In your head, there's always an image of what you've written. And to be honest with you, at least speaking for myself, when Eric came back with the art, it was unlike completely anything that I had thought of. So it was actually really exciting to keep getting pieces from him and just trying to actually trace his mind process. What he was seeing in my poetry versus what I was seeing was really fascinating. It was really kind of an exercise in the most visceral of ways of getting feedback on what somebody is thinking and seeing when they're reading their poetry. So it was pretty fascinating, actually. So one of the examples I think of is I have a poem in here, and they're not titled because I'm lazy that way apparently, but it's basically about me getting out of bed in the middle of the night. The toilet tank is running, and his illustration is of fish nailed to a board.
Right.
And so sometimes I still kind of wonder what might have been going through his head when he did it, but I find it fascinating, and I love all of the illustrations. It's just, sometimes I wonder how one would come up with a fish nailed to a board after reading that poem. So it's pretty fascinating to see what happened.
And that's part of what I found so interesting was reading a poem and going through the different images, but certainly the one originally put next to it, and kind of creating another juxtaposition, kind of adding another layer already to it that was already in the words. So
yeah, and sometimes I mean, I think that some of the images create almost a dissonance while you're reading the poetry, in that it kind of forces you to delve deeper into what you're reading to try and correlate the image to the words. And so I think that it really kind of forces the reader to engage a little more, which is exactly what I was hoping for. So, and the fact that you can mix and match, that adds another level of interaction with the work, which you obviously don't get in a lot of different books. So.
Right. Really innovative.
Pretty fun stuff. It
Yeah.
was actually really fun. I'm still putting together books, so and they are available for order. But
Where do people go to order?
I have a website. It's called temp-lobe-press.org, and you can contact me through there. You can also email me at causticgnostic@gmail.com.
So with a K or a C?
That would be a C. CAUSTIC-GNOSTIC. All one word.
For those of us without the vocabulary grasp.
It's all stolen.
Then the other work of Senor Franco that I have here that I've stumbled upon is The Middle Path, which was drawn by Layla, who you probably saw in the last interview. And kind of an interesting tale of kind of a Buddhist principle and minimalization and trying to live and take in equal amounts. That's kind of what I got.
Yeah, I think there's definitely that. It's definitely inspired by Buddhism. And roughly, just basically, it's the story of sometime in the future, an indeterminate time in the future, something's happened to humans, and it's basically a world taken over by robots, and there's a human, you don't know if there are more or not, basically struggling to survive in this society that is sprung up around her of robots, and there's the remains of humans still, houses and that type of thing. But it's all in her, the story is all about her acceptance of what's happening now and the things she's lost and her existence now. So yeah, there's definitely a give and take there where she's struggling to survive and such, but she also realizes, or is starting to realize, that her time is basically up, and giving the time that belonged to us to what's come after. So the acceptance and the compassion for what's come after as well.
All right.
Yeah, highfalutin concepts.
So on that one, did you just write a script and pass it off?
Yeah, Layla actually asked me to do a script for her for this, the Fox Witch and Other Tales. This is it right here. And this is the Middle Path was intended to be in this, and she drew up some mini comics. She printed up some mini comics for each different story, and so I agreed. I was pretty excited to work with her. Her art's amazing, so I considered it a gift to work with her. And so I wanted to sit down and kind of write a story that would maybe incorporate a bunch of different types of things in it, so that to give her a chance to kind of showcase what she can do. And so there's a little action in it. There's some contemplative scenes. So I tried to kind of provide some ups and downs for her to work with. And so I wrote the script and gave it to her, and basically just let her run with it. I don't like to give a lot of direction to the people I work with, so I like for them to just come up with what they're going to come up with. So I did provide some minimal direction in the script, but she pretty much ran with it, and I thought the result was really incredible. It completely lifted the story up. So I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. Super stuff. So I have to ask, since you're such a jovial fellow, and all the stuff that I have gotten to read, where's the yucks? Where's the
Yeah, that's kind of funny because I don't write a lot of yucks. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that by nature I'm a pretty jovial guy. I'm pretty funny or whatever, but make a lot of jokes. But when I write, I think that I write to kind of release a lot of things that are going on inside me, and so it's how I deal with certain problems or things that are going on, and so, or ideas that I'm wrestling with, and so my writing tends to be a little more serious. I am working on a project that is comedy. It's actually going to be a novel-length feature about a bumbling necromancer. So that should be funny. Cross the fingers. But yeah, I generally, I tend to write more serious stuff, or if I'm writing genre stuff, more horror type things. So I like the idea of dealing with the existential, and so horror lends itself to dealing with the existential, and so I do tend to do that type of thing too. So. But yeah, I'm trying to refine my comedy writing through this project. Yeah, so hopefully that'll go well.
Yeah.
It'll be worth reading.
Right. Then you've worked on a couple other writings that I haven't had the chance to read yet, but
yeah.
Line here.
So one of the other things that I did was this Tales to Audify anthology, which was a pulp anthology, modern pulp. And so I kind of had the chance to kind of go off and just be kind of fun and goofy with it. It's a horror story, and it's called The Dark Mother's Maw. And it's basically about this guy who stumbles upon this plot, but he basically discovers that the Earth is a sentient entity that needs to be fed. The actual planet is, and so it's just kind of a story of him discovering that. So it's kind of a throwback to the 30s and 40s pulp adventure stories. So weird fiction, kind of. So that was awful fun to write. I'm not sure if this is still available, but you can search for it on Amazon. I know it was available there. So, and then another thing that I did was the Awesome Anthology. This is from like 2007. I'm a guest co-host on Indie Spinner Rack, which is a comic podcast basically devoted to nothing but independent comics.
One of the best out there, top rated, right?
Yeah, it's actually, they get a lot of downloads. So it's really fun. It's really goofy. But they did an anthology that benefited the Center for Cartoon Studies, and I contributed a small strip to that, which was about my childhood growing up on a street named Franklin Street, and the secret organization that we as kids formed to fight the bullies on our streets. And so that's a little more comedic as well, but just really short. I think it was only 2 pages, so 2 or 3 pages maybe, but it was fun. And I got to do this with my friend Jason Heller, who he used to do a lot of mini comics. One of them was named Rice and Beans from way back. That would have been early 90s that he was doing this. And so it was an excuse to get to work with him. So it was pretty fun. I worked with him previously on another anthology a few years ago, like a while ago, in the early 90s as well, called Flying Saucer. That was pretty fun too. So it was good to work with him. The premise of that anthology was all what would happen on the day of an alien invasion. And so that was pretty fun. So it was fun to work with him again. He's a great talent. He does a lot of writing for The Onion and Westward. And he has a book coming out. It's the companion book to the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. So,
Oh, what?
yeah. So pretty cool stuff.
So I'm getting a lot of sci-fi, a lot of like B-movie stuff. Is there any like big comic influences coming up, or anything that sticks out to you?
Comic book wise? Yeah, I mean, a lot. I don't know if I'm up and up on a lot of the new stuff right now because it's just so expensive. But what I pick up things without regard to how new they are. So some of the biggest influences on me lately have been Skyscrapers of the Midwest. That's an amazing book by Jonathan Cotter, I believe his name is. Cotter's for sure his last name. It's kind of blanking on his first name, sorry. But that's an amazing book, and that is about this kind of twilight time between childhood and your teenage years. It's those preteen years, and it's really sweet and really, part of it's really tragic at the same time. It's very much like I think what everybody goes through at that age. So, Asterios Paula by David Mazzucchelli, pretty amazing stuff. So that's pretty amazing. It's basically this, he had been working on it for something like the last 10 years. And it's heavily mythologically influenced and such. And then I'm, you know, I grew up reading superheroes, so still read those from time to time. It's kind of hard to get into them when everything is centered around big events instead of focusing on.
Can't just pick up a book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always kind of been like that, where you couldn't pick up a book; you were always in the middle of a story. But it seems like every book now is geared towards funneling you towards the next big event that's happening, the big mega crossover event. And so it's very difficult for me to get into that type of thing. So sometimes I just want to pick up a comic book and read a comic and not, you know, wonder how this ties into, you know, the Earth, the new universe shattering thing that's going on. So,
right. Or standing on its own.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that would be nice. Or even just a plain Spider-Man story, right?
Right.
Where, you know, sometimes it's nice to read about Peter Parker being unable to pay his rent, you know, instead of all this crazy stuff that goes on. So, I don't know, I'm not trying to bemoan the state of comic books, so it's just, sometimes it can be a little difficult to get into them if you're not fully immersed in them already, which I think is a problem with the industry. They need more entry type books. So, pretty interesting what they're going to do with the relaunch of all the titles for DC, which provides a good entry point for a lot of people, but it's all going to be in execution, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, so comics were always a huge influence on me. From things like Spider-Man and the X-Men to Cerebus, Love and Rockets and that kind of thing. I kind of, as I got older, I swung towards more of the independent comics, but yeah, I still have a soft spot for superheroes, for sure. Which I know you still read superhero stuff?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to give up, man. It's just, they're fun. And it really is, in a lot of ways, modern mythology. So it's kind of interesting to be at the ground level of that mythology, you know. So I always wonder what it's going to be like in 500 years. If people are going to be talking about Spider-Man like they do Gilgamesh. So it's interesting.
It's an interesting idea, but at the same time, I mean, Gilgamesh is told in more than one tale true, but you can boil it down to a fixed number of works, whereas just the sheer continuation and attrition and all the different meaning, like, I think no matter what, it would have to be approached differently. I mean, just the origin tale has been told about as many times as there are
but that's the story that we really care about. You know,
the origin?
Yeah. I mean, when somebody asks you, Matt, tell me about Batman, what are you going to tell them? Are you going to tell them about what happened last year? Or are you going to tell them how Batman became Batman?
Right.
Well, his parents got killed. He went on this extreme training regimen. He got inspired by by a bat. That's the story that we tell everybody. You know, Spider-Man, the radioactive Spider. That's the if it ever turns out that these characters are talked about in mythic terms, like we talk about Gilgamesh and Jason and the Argonauts and all the Greek gods and such. It's going to be the origin stories that we tell. I think it's not going to be. Remember that time when Gotham got hit by an earthquake, and you know, those are all transient to the origin, I think. And so, but I see what you're saying, in that these are characters that still, for us, continue on. They're not set in finite stories. They continue on and on and on. But I mean, at some point, you would think it has to end at some point. Are they still going to be publishing Batman in 300 years? I don't know. Maybe. Well, I don't know what to say about that.
As long as it sells.
It simultaneously kind of makes me happy and sad at the same time. But I don't know. It would definitely be, if we talk about these heroes in those ways, it's going to be their origins. And it really sticks out. It's the story that we all know about all these heroes. It's the one story where, if you've read any type of comic book at all, you know the origin stories. So it's the one thing we have in common.
Well, I do a brief sentence or two with the origin on every issue, just as a pickup point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the one touchstone that if you can grab onto this one little part of the character's story, nothing else matters. That's what they're telling you. Hey, you can read this little blurb on the front of the page, of the splash page or first page or whatever, and it tells you how Batman became Batman. If you know that, you don't need to know anything else. You can jump right into the story because you have basically all you need to know about Batman. That's kind of how it seems to me, where it's like the basic 101 knowledge that you have. And you have that, and it doesn't matter what's coming from it. You pick it up pretty quickly.
It's an interesting point. I guess from a selling point, if they're dealing with the villain in the issue, they don't ever have that quick little blurb for the origin of the villain, so that's the other half of the coin.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like with Beowulf. You have a lot of history detailing what Beowulf's come from and what he's done, but you don't really hear a lot about where Grendel came from, right? So the villains are just there as a backdrop, as a piece of the story, a set piece, in opposition to the hero, to tell the hero's story. And the villain is just there to help that one. And so you don't need it for the villain.
Well, that's kind of interesting too, because with Beowulf, Grendel's visualization throughout the ages has dramatically changed from, I mean, it's always written the same, but the visualization, the idea of how that villain is drastically different from one age. Well, not from one age to the next, but if you took the origin of it to a few down the line, it's more monstrous to more just evil looking dude, mustache, depending sort of.
Right. Well, I mean, it reflects the fears of that specific time. So the original monstrous depictions, obviously, it's the fear of the unknown, it's the fear of what's out there in the night. Whereas now, at least what a lot of comic book fans think of as Grendel is Matt Wagner's Grendel. And that is, he's a suave businessman kind of guy, and there's a fear in that. The rich person with a lot of power who's able to basically do what he wants without repercussion. So, for a while, but he's able to inflict a lot of misery on, regardless of who he's inflicting it on. He's able to act without remorse or conscience or anything, and a large part of that is because of his position. So, definitely two different Grendels, but I mean, you can argue that the name Grendel was chosen for a reason. Now Wagner chose it for a reason. So, obviously he's trying to evoke images of Beowulf's Grendel. So, and he's basically telling you Grendel's a monster. So he's just a monster wrapped up in a green hat. So I think, yeah, it definitely reflects what's going on at the time, the fears of the creator, but also the creator's tapping into this larger group fear. And that's why you see different representations. And that's why you see the Joker go up and down in terms of just how crazy and homicidal he is. Just the world feels like it's getting a little more out of control. The Joker gets a little more out of control. So,
not just crazy guy in makeup looking with like a crazy purple suit with a gash in his face.
yeah, a gash. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he is the embodiment. He's anarchy and chaos on two legs. So, you know, what is more anarchic and chaotic than somebody who has these gashes in his face to give himself this maniacal grin, who just completely acts without rhyme or reason, because that's how the world feels right now. There's a lot of things spiraling out of control. So you have this villain that embodies all of that. So, and he's the least ordered of Batman's villains. So he is, well, that's why he's Batman's major. He's not a number one. He's exactly the opposite of Batman. Batman is complete control, order, so, and discipline. Exactly, discipline. The Joker is everything opposite. And so, reflecting the fears of the time, we want to impose, just as humans, there's a basic need to impose order on things. And so, that is why I think that superheroes are this mythology that we're building for today. And so, Batman is our need to impose order on things, on a world gone completely crazy, and he is the embodiment of discipline and order, justice. So yeah, that's what fascinates me, is that how are we going to view these characters in 500 years? Because we've really only we've had less than 100 to digest them. So it should be interesting to see what happens in 300, 500 years.
Yeah.
We'll never see it, but it's fascinating to think about. So.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Without us sitting down writing out what we think the way we will.
There's another story, right? I mean, Matt Wagner did that a lot with Grendel. How did Hunter Rose get viewed in later years? I mean, he went from being this horrible villain to basically this, this religion. And so it's just interesting to think about how even real historical figures have become mythic characters. And so, like Alexander the Great or whatever. So I mean, those are real people. So with these fictional characters that people identify with so strongly, now more people are identifying with them because of the movies and such. They're creeping out into a wider consciousness of pop culture, the pop culture consciousness. So how are they going to affect that consciousness, that pop culture? How are they going to be reflected in 500 years? Maybe that we've forgotten. I don't know. Maybe anthropology departments will be studying. They'll dig up some comics warehouse, and it'll be a great find. They'll look at it as some kind of religious texts or something. Who knows? But
you'll have a bunch of nerds sitting around reading comics.
That's again, because it never ends. So yeah, they'll find nerds buried in the warehouse reading comics. It'll be like Pompeii, where they're all just crouched in the corner and they're reading comics or something. Should be, yeah, that would be really interesting. So, but yeah, so I don't know how we got off on that, but anyway, I think you started out with comics being an influence. Yeah, they're a huge influence. I think about them a lot. So, and that's the kind of thing I think about when I think about comics. I am what you call an uber nerd. So, I don't know, but it's fun to think about. But yeah, so that's basically what's going on with me right now. The website just got put up recently, so if you'd like to check that out. Also, if you're another cool thing that's going down is the planning of the Denver Comic Con.
Right. I was going to ask you about that, but
huge
right
stuff.
in.
So
this is one of the brainchildren behind it.
well, I mean, yeah, it should be really cool. We're looking to bring a regional con to Denver, as you know, and so we have the convention center booked up for June 15th, 16th, and 17th of 2012. So, and in the run-up to that convention, we're going to have a literary conference that will focus on comics and pop culture and education within those things and how to use them as educational tools. And so it's all benefiting Comic Book Classroom, which is an after-school program to help kids with literacy by using comic books and helping them create and draw their own stories and be able to find a voice to tell their own stories through the graphic medium, the graphic novel medium. So, it's really exciting stuff. So, and it's also very terrifying in terms of the amount of work that's needed, but it's exciting, and I think that we're going to put on a great show. We have some confirmed guests already. So we have Rebecca Isaacs, Jason Aaron, and Noah Van Skyver, who's a local cartoonist here. He just got picked up for Greatest American Comics this year, and he was an Ignatz Award nominee. So a rising star in alternative comics and independent comics for sure. So, and we're going to have more guests to announce shortly. So I can't let it out early. But,
right, things have to firm up before you can say who.
Yeah, things have to firm up, and we also, we release on a timeline. So the more information, as we get more information, we prepare it for release. And then
gotta hook them.
We gotta hook them. So no, it's really just about we just want people to be excited for the show. And Denver's had other comic conventions before, and they've all been great.
But nothing to this scale.
Well, I think that's the key. Is that we're the first people to really go for the convention center. We're the first. Most of them were just like conventions that were looking to draw people from Denver, and we're looking to draw from the surrounding region. We want to put on a show that's worthy of Denver. Denver probably deserves a bigger show than what it's had, and we really think that the time's right. The fans are ready for it, and just it's time to have a show in Denver that people can take notice of, and where we can draw top caliber talent to come and interact with the fans here. So yeah, it's really, really awesome. It's exciting. So it should be really fun.
It will be.
DenverComicCon.com, and if you want to learn more about Comic Book Classroom, comicbookclassroom.org. And the convention again and the literary conference will be fundraisers for Comic Book Classroom. So not only are you going to get a weekend of fun comic book nerdiness, and if you go to the conference, you'll get a full week of it. But it will also be helpful.
So it all comes full circle, and nothing to feel guilty about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not only are you able to you'll be able to meet a lot of cool creators, and you'll be able to find a lot of cool stuff, but you'll also be helping out. So if you have someone in your life that maybe will give you a hard time about coming or saying, why did you spend that much money? You can say, but it's for charity. Right. So, and it really won't be that expensive. So you'll be able to have a blast for a weekend and do it fairly cheaply, we think, and benefit Comic Book Classroom and help a lot of kids with reading skills and storytelling skills. Should be fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me on. I had a great time. So. I can't wait to avoid this on YouTube so that I don't see myself on camera because I hate that. No, actually, I'm sure that I can't wait to see it. It'll be fun. So. And yeah, I hope that it was a good time for you as well.
Super.
Awesome. Woot. And thanks for watching. Thanks.